Father God, we just thank you. You are such a good Father. Lord, we love you, and we thank you that you love us so much that you died for us. Father, I pray that you would just bless this time together, that you would open our hearts, Lord, and open our ears and our eyes to see and hear what you're saying here, Lord, tonight. I pray that we would just be changed by being here tonight, Lord. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, we want to continue in the book of Exodus. And we're going to finish 17 and 18 today. A couple of interesting stories in the middle here, and then as we move through Exodus, we start getting Moses up on Mount Sinai, and we start getting all this law stuff, and it gets pretty interesting. We'll go a little quicker through that eventually, but it's there for a reason, so we don't want to just skip it altogether. But chapter 17 today in Exodus. Last time what we looked at was the many times in which the Israelites, even after God would do miraculous things for them, it seemed like the very next day they'd be grumbling and complaining. Even when they could see the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, and God brought water and food and protection, it seems that they still found something to complain about. And it started with a bit of grumbling, and it just got worse from there. But it seems like we're going to move on from that. And in Leviticus, we discover in verse 8 of 17 that the Israelites, while they were camped in the desert, actually were attacked. And it's interesting to me that what is missing in this story is there's no grumbling. So it makes me think there's a different theme. It makes me think that the writer, Moses, has a different theme, a different idea for us to get hold of. Because the last, 4 or 5 chapters have been that pattern of God does something, they say, oh, that's not, thanks, but no thanks, and kind of thing. But let's read verse 8 of chapter 17. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." If I'm not mistaken, this is really the first time that Joshua begins to be introduced to somebody important. Okay? I don't think we've heard Joshua before in passing, but not as someone who is all of a sudden in charge. Moses says to Joshua, "You go and choose some of our men, and you go out and fight the Amalekites. While you do that, I'm going to be standing here on this hill with the staff of God in my hands." You're Joshua. What are you thinking about that? Yeah, right. So I'm going to go down there, and you're going to be up there, and yeah. Right. Do you agree with him? Is that? Are there other things you'd be thinking? Okay, maybe. Okay. So they have seen that Moses has struck the rock with water, right? Just a few verses before. They quarreled with Moses, "Give us water." And so Moses cries out to the Lord, verse 4, "What am I supposed to do with these people? They're getting ready to stone me." And God says, "Go and strike the rock." Which is ironic because they've picked up rocks to stone him, to kill him, and he strikes a rock to get them life. It's completely ironic, I think, anyway. So he's used his staff when he brought the 10 plagues upon Egypt. He's used his staff when he was parting the water. I mean, I think they're getting a picture, and especially Joshua, his staff means something. So I think, to a degree, yeah, it's like, okay. But I think Joshua has seen enough to know. See, it's interesting to me that Joshua doesn't actually say, oh, come on, give me a break. Really? I'm going to do the hard work and you're going to just stand there? I think that's significant because the last 4 chapters have all been all about grumbling, all about complaining, even when Moses was delivering them. But I think we're supposed to understand that there's something different about Joshua. Because he doesn't say, are you kidding me? Why don't you do it? He does it. He says, verse 10, so Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. He went. He trusted. He knows the power of God. And so he goes. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. Why the top of the hill? Why not just stay in the valley? Why not on a horse? Why not? Why did he go at the top of a hill? How do you mean? Okay, he can see what's happening, and they can see him. Yeah. I mean, Moses is pretty significant, and not only the Israelites can see Moses, but the Amalekites can see Moses. Right? The Amalekites can look up on that hill and they can say, there's Moses, their leader. That's the guy we heard about who parted the waters. That's the guy we heard about who's giving them water. That's the guy we heard about who's giving them food. That's the guy we heard about who's got a special connection with God. There he is up on that hill. And so they're watching, and the Israelites can say, yeah, that's our guy. He's the guy who did, right? And so Joshua's fighting the Amalekites, and he's up on the top of the hill. Verse 11, as long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. So, I don't think Moses was playing tricks, right? Oh, that's cool. Hey, oh, that's cool. I don't think he was doing that, right? He's holding up his staff. You ever you do that trick where not a trick, but you do that test where you hold out your hand with a penny in it? Maybe only junior high boys did it. I don't know. Okay, Michelle says, yeah, definitely. So you hold your hand out with a penny in it, and how long can you hold that penny in your hand? It doesn't take long, and you'll find that your hand starts sagging, right? And it's not the weight of the penny. It's just, holding your hand out there. So, yeah, it really is. You're fighting against gravity, and you're using those muscles and everything, and after a while, your hand droops. I mean, you get tired in your shoulder or your forearm or whatever it might be. Moses has got this staff that he's holding up. You ever climbed up a ladder and you've got a paint up above you? You can do that forever, right? I mean, your arm never gets tired. It's like, oh yeah, I can do this all day, baby, all day. No, I mean, you're tired. And just doing that, I could feel the blood rushing through my arm, right? Because you're raising it above your head, so your heart's pumping blood up that way. And after a while, you got to rest. So Moses is up there doing that, and I think they're making the connection. The Israelites are winning. They're looking up. There's Moses' staff up there. Yeah, let's go get him. Hey, what's going on? We have to retreat or whatever. Things aren't going so well, and they see Moses he's resting. He's got to rest. And so I think, verse 12, whenever Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone, that is Aaron and Hur, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. So at first he's standing the whole time. Standing gets tiring. Standing holding a staff up gets tiring. Moses is 80 years old, remember. Okay? He's not in his 20s. He's 80 years old. He lives to be 120. Aaron and Hur, so they put a stone on her and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. So Aaron and Hur are saying, hey, there's a connection here. We got to do something about this. Moses, sit down. Let us take a burden off of you. And Moses, we'll hold your hands up. So apparently Moses has both hands up, by the sounds of this anyway. One on one side and one on the other side. They hold his hands up. And so Moses is there, and they're really doing all the work for him. Every once in a while, they probably have to take a bit of a break, but he can fill in while they're resting, kind of thing. So what's going on there? What do you see happening there? What insights do you have? What do you think about that? Well, sorry I asked. Well, let's move on. It's a good thing nobody on Facebook could hear that. And they're all going, "What? Tell us, tell us." But we'll move on because we're going to see something similar to this again, and maybe we'll help make some more connections. Verse 14, then the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of the Amalek from under heaven. They didn't write down anything on a scroll about water, turning bitter into good water, from getting water from a rock, from feeding, from manna. They didn't write that on a scroll. They write this on a scroll. Make sure you remember this, and make sure Joshua hears it. Well, why does he want to make sure Joshua hears it? What do you think? There it is. Yeah, he's trying to teach him something. What does he want him to know? That's a tougher question. You got the first answer. Somebody else can get the second answer. He's definitely trying to teach him something. God wants Joshua to remember this and know something. Joshua was the one who was fighting the battle. He was down in the valley. Okay. Yeah. Joshua was down in the valley. Joshua, he was not aware of holding hands up. He was not aware of what was going up on that hill. He didn't have time in the middle of the battle go, gee, what are they doing up there? Whoops. Not going to happen. He was in the middle. He didn't know what was happening. Oh, he might have had an idea that the rod was raised, and he knew the rod meant something. He knew God was working through Moses. But write it on a scroll. Make sure Joshua knows of this. Because I'm going to blot out the name of Amalek. Who leads Israel after Moses dies? Joshua. Joshua needs this encouragement one day. Joshua's leading the nation. He's Moses' right-hand guy. He's not missing all of this, earlier, all of the complaining. He's not missing all the grumbling. He's not missing all that. And he knows he's taken over. He knows he's the next leader in line. Really wants to be a leader? You ready for this? Joshua, what I want you to remember is what God is doing. Joshua, what I want you to really focus on is what God is doing. Not on what people are doing, but what is God doing? What is God capable of doing? Because it's in Joshua's leadership that Amalek is blotted out from under heaven. So Moses builds an altar, and he called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. That's an interesting phrase. Because his hands were lifted against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites. The throne of the Lord? Is that an overstatement? Are there some other versions that we have? This is NIV, the updated NIV. Anybody else got a different version? And what it might say? Everybody's got NIV? Seriously? Wow. Mhm. Okay, and then read the next verse. Hmm. Hmm. That's interesting. Okay. Well, that's why I don't study from the King James Version. Oh, should I say that out loud? I just did. Too late. Oh, there you go. Because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. In what way? In what way were the Amalekites raising their hands against the throne of the Lord? Yeah, by attacking the Lord's people. Yeah, they weren't just attacking the Lord's people, they were attacking God. The cloud's still there. Right? The pillar of cloud is still there. They know all about what's going on, how God is providing for them. It doesn't happen without nobody knowing. There's scouts, there's spies, there's people everywhere trying to find out what's going on with Israel. And the Amalekites say, we can take them. Our gods are bigger than their God. And that's really what's behind most every war in the Old Testament is very clearly and consciously about whose God is really God. Right? We have some stories in Kings where, I forget the nation, but they come against Israel and they fight them in the valleys and they lose, and they say, oh, well, that's because their God is the God of the valleys, but our God of the hills our God of the hills is stronger than their God of the hills. So they fight them on the hills and they lose on the hills. Oh, well, their God of the hills seems to be stronger than our God of the hills too. Their God of the valleys is stronger, their God of the hills is stronger. Apparently their God is stronger than our God, so we better stop the war thing. Their wars were all about our God is bigger than your God. My dad's bigger than your dad, right? That's kind of what it is. And so the Amalekites are coming against because they think their God is bigger than Jehovah God. And so they're not just coming against the people of God. They're coming against God himself. Right? And that's interesting for us because we are the people of God. So when you're being persecuted, when you're being attacked, they're not just attacking you. They're not just persecuting you. They're persecuting your God. They're persecuting God in us. We're not so conscious about who we serve as gods in the New Testament today as they were in the Old Testament. But really, isn't it about that? My God's bigger than your God. So you, Christian, you think your God is so big? Oh yeah, try this on for size. See what your God's going to do when I do this to you. Right? We each, it's still about whose God is bigger. It's still about whose God is more powerful. So the Israelites learn a lesson, and the rest of the nations learn a bit of a lesson. And so we get to chapter 18. And it's curious that chapter 18 is about Jethro, his father-in-law, visiting Moses. Because it seems to come out of nowhere. Just like I would suggest to you this, the verses we just read, the Amalekites attacking Israel, it seems to come out of nowhere. It's like, did you put this in the right order? Did we get this mixed around? I mean, why would these stories be like this? Well, I'm not going to read all of 18, but I'll summarize most of it. So Jethro, who's the priest of Midian, he's father-in-law of Moses. He hears everything God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how God had brought Israel out of Egypt. So Moses sent his wife away, and at some point in time, and Jethro comes back and says, "Hey, I brought your wife and kids. It's time you'd had a visit. Don't forget that you're a husband." And so his father-in-law begins to visit. And Moses begins to tell him everything that happened. And tells him all about the sea, all about the rock, all about the water, all about the battle. He just tells him. And in verse 9, Jethro's delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. He says, "Praise be to the Lord who rescued you from the hand of Egypt and from Pharaoh." Well, that's interesting because Jethro is a priest of Midian. He's not a priest of Jehovah. So we have the Amalekites coming against the throne of God, saying, "My God's bigger than your God." We have Jethro, who doesn't say, "My God's bigger than your God," but says, "Your God is bigger than my God." So we have another theme repeated there. He says in verse 11, "Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly." And so Moses' father-in-law brings a burnt offering and sacrifices to the true God. And the next day, verse 13, Moses takes his seat to serve as a judge for the people. And they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is it you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Imagine that. You've got some sort of conflict with somebody, and you can't solve it on your own, so you got to take it to Moses. It's like a Disneyland ride that goes very, very slowly. Or, the lineup. Space Mountain. You got to line up for an hour and a half when it's really busy. But at least you're moving. Moses is there from morning till evening. I bet you they got there as soon as they can, because we know if we get there at 11 a.m., there's going to be 150 people already. If you get there at 2, there's going to be 450 people. Don't even bother going after that, because the line's not going to get to Moses. Morning till evening. There are about 12 hours of sunlight in Israel. Morning till evening. 12 hours. That's what Moses is doing, and all the people are there. And Moses says, "Well, I got to do it because people come to me to seek God's will. So whenever there's a dispute, I decide, and I tell them what God's decrees and instructions are." And Moses' father-in-law says, "This isn't good. This isn't good for you. It's not good for the people. It doesn't make sense. Moses, you got to get a different way of leading, because this is not working out. You and these people who come out to you will only wear themselves out. The work's too heavy for you. You can't do it alone." And so he says, "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to spread it around. You're going to appoint some representatives of the people before God, and teach them and instruct them and show them the way they're to live and how they're to behave. Select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials." We never actually go to Exodus chapter 18 for qualifications and characteristics of leadership, but we really ought to. Did you get that? Who's going to be representatives of God? Those who know the decrees and instructions of God, and those who understand how they're to live and how they're to behave. Capable men from all the people who fear God, who are trustworthy, who hate dishonest gain. Those guys are your leaders. And so he says, appoint all these people, and any really difficult case, like the Supreme Justice Court cases, they go to you. The ones that nobody else can figure out. Your most wisest men, those who cannot figure that out, those are the only ones that ever get to you. Because Moses, you can't sit there all day. You can't do that. You're going to die soon. You'll wear yourself out. And you'll wear everybody else out. So Moses listens to his father-in-law. He does everything he says. He chooses capable men. He makes them leaders and officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. And then Moses sends his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returns to his own country. End of chapter 17, we have the Amalekites. We have the introduction of Joshua. Joshua, go lead. Joshua, remember this. Chapter 18, Jethro comes, he recognizes who God is, and he recognizes a problem with Moses. He says, Moses, you can't do this alone. How is that similar to what we read in 17? Can you make any connections there? Teamwork. Yeah. Joshua is fighting with the battle in the valley, and who's up on the hill? Moses and Aaron and Hur. And Aaron and Hur hold up Moses' hands. Moses, you can't do this alone. You're going to get tired out. There's that physical, you're going to get tired out. And then in the next chapter, he's sitting there all alone, getting emotionally, mentally, that's enough, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually worn out. Moses, you can't do this alone. Moses, you're not meant to do this alone. Moses, you need help. Moses, leadership is not a single person occupation. Moses, in order for this to happen right, you need others around you who will support you, who will hold up your hands, who will do tasks that you don't have to do. Moses, teach people to be leaders, and people learn to be leaders. See, I think that's the introduction here to leadership. Moses has been kind of a one-man show. He has Aaron with him, but we don't hear a lot from Aaron. In fact, we discover later on that Aaron and Miriam get together and say, hey, we're your older brother and sister. Who made you leader over us? You're our baby brother. I'm the one who put you in the Nile. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be here. So what do you think? You're such a hot shot. And God says, time out. Bad move. That's not what you want to do. But Moses is carrying the burden by himself. And God's setting it up to say, you don't need to do that. That's why we have other leaders. God is setting up the nation for success. Right? And Joshua is learning this, and the other leaders are learning this. And it's kind of a time of rest they're going into, because they stay at Sinai for quite a while. And God begins to organize what it looks like to be a healthy nation. And I think what it looks like to be a healthy church. Right? There's levels of leadership. I don't know if levels is the right way to put it, but there's leadership, and there's leaders who help leaders, and there's followers who follow leaders. And they all work together. Because, down in the trenches when they're fighting the battle, it's Joshua who is leading down there with his army following, but it's Moses up there. Moses isn't called to be down there. Moses is called to be up there. Aaron and Hur are called to be up there. If Aaron and Hur didn't go with Moses and help him, they would have lost that battle. Even Jesus had 12 disciples because he was teaching them to be leaders. I really don't know how to end this because I didn't have an ending in mind. which is not a good thing for homiletics, is it? Yeah, In fact, some preaching teachers will say, you start with your conclusion and then you do the rest. So I failed. Because I don't have a conclusion. I think I need to pray about it, yeah. So, help me with the conclusion. What do you learn about this? What is God saying through this? If you were to put it in a big idea, what is the big idea? The church is a team. Takes a village. Both of those are good. Others? No lone rangers in God's kingdom. Yeah. Leaders are men of integrity, people of integrity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? I think those are good ones. I think that's what it is. It's a leadership lesson. It takes a village. No lone rangers. I forgot what you said, Neil. It takes a team. Yeah. It takes a team. When I think it was my second pastorate, we were in a little town about an hour and 15 minutes west of Edmonton, up in Alberta. And the title that they gave me, kind of informally, was head cook and chief bottle washer. Mm-hmm. Is that biblical? Now think about it. What we just read, is that biblical? No. Because chief cook or head cook and chief bottle washer says you do everything by yourself. It takes a village. It's teamwork. Yes? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. Can you imagine how difficult it was for Moses to appoint all these other people to take these cases? What if they didn't get it right? What if they got something wrong? What if they didn't understand it all? What if they didn't make a decision that he would have made? What if he didn't do it the way he does it? Well, he has to pray a lot. That's true. It's true. But I think that's part of being a team, is getting people alongside of us, our Joshuas, our Aarons, our Hurs, whatever, and teaching and training and there's spiritual growth. And then you're right, stepping aside and letting them do it. Even if it might not be the way we've always done it. Because, the fact is nobody can do it like you can do it, right? But they shouldn't do it the way you do it, because they're not you. So it takes a village. From the leader needs to know that, and everybody else needs to know that too. Yeah. It's a team. Any other thoughts, questions? There's more continuity. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Yes. First Corinthians 12. Yeah, we are Christ's body, and we're all a part of that body, and so every part of the body has to function so everybody functions right, so that we function together and most effectively. Yeah, it's very true. I had to say sometimes to people when they ask, so what's happened with that? What's happened with that? What's the deal with that? And I respond saying, I don't know. I gave that over to this leader, and they're doing it with whatever they do with it. I don't know. Yeah, but I need to know. Call them. They're leading it. I trust them. If they fail, they fail. They'll learn from it. You have a question? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Takes a team. I like that. So there you go. Chapter 18, end of 17. It takes a team. I think that is the lesson.